The point of that story is the alternative to success here in Copenhagen is unacceptable. And to all those who are feeling all kinds of emotions at this stage in the negotiations, my plea to you is to realize what is at stake and reach a result that will give momentum to this process, make it a success, and set the stage for the completion of a binding international treaty next year. This is the challenge of the next 3 days. This historic gathering is being attended by leaders from almost every nation in the world. Some of them already here, most of them due to arrive in the next 48 hours. But there is one important part of humankind not present and not formally represented at these negotiations. Even though I have no credentials entitling me to speak for them, I would nevertheless like to advocate their interests. They are the generations that will follow us. The decisions made here will powerfully in Copenhagen will powerfully determine the shape and the nature of the future that they will inherit from us. They will not care very much about some of the disputes that are raging here in this conference. They will find it difficult to understand how some of these disputes could be allowed to interfere with the result that is essential for the survival of our civilization. We have 3 days to avoid a failure here that would delay the actions necessary to save their prospects. A delay at this point could call into question the viability of this undertaking. We cannot allow Copenhagen to become Doha. More is at stake than many seem to realize. Now that global civilization is interconnected on every continent as never before, we here must reclaim our ability to use the rule of law as an instrument of human redemption. That is our challenge. The future of our civilization is threatened as never before. We do have the means to secure that future. The question we must answer is whether or not we have the political will. Today, we dumped another 90 million tons of global warming pollution into the thin shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet, as if it is an open sewer. More than 25 million of those tons were added to the ocean today, further increasing the acidity of the entire world ocean toward levels that could soon threaten everything that makes a shell or a reef, including the tiny zooplankton at the base of the ocean food chain. More than 1 billion people rely on fish as their principal source of protein. The growth in the emissions of CO2 from energy and industry has now exceeded even the most fossil fuel intensive scenario that was developed by the IPCC at the end of the 1990s. Not only were global carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels last year 40% higher than those in 1990, the rate of increase has also gone up by 40%. These increases in greenhouse gas concentrations are, as you know, now raising deep concern among many scientists that we are on a trajectory that would take us past the threshold for many tipping points that mark the boundary between responsibility and recklessness. We're currently at 388 parts per million compared to the 280 of pre-industrial levels. But there is no doubt that anything above 350 parts per million cannot be considered a safe level of greenhouse gas concentrations. We are seeing the implications of the climate crisis all around us now. Just 1 week ago, the World Meteorological Organization reported that the decade we are ending is the warmest decade on record, and that 2009 will be one of the 5 warmest years on record. In August, ocean surface temperatures were the warmest for any August on record, according to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States. One of the most visible signs of this warming can be seen at the polar extremes of our planet. As many of you are well aware, the shrinking of ice sheets in Greenland and West Antarctica is now far exceeding past projections, and in some areas, glaciers are entering a runaway melt mode. In some parts of Antarctica, ice sheets have been losing 30 feet per year in thickness since 2003. And that rate of decline is 50% higher than it was in the middle of the last decade. The loss of ice from West Antarctica is estimated to have increased by 60% in the decade to 2006, and overall by 140% from the Antarctic Peninsula during the same period. And the study last month found that even the massive East Antarctic ice sheet has been losing mass for the last 3 years. In the far north, we know that the Arctic sea ice decline has also accelerated far, far beyond the expectations of the climate models. The April 2009 Arctic Marine Shipping Assessment, the result of a 4-year study by the Arctic Council, states, and I quote, "There is a possibility of an ice-free Arctic Ocean for a short period in summer, perhaps as early as 2015. The loss of that reflective ice cover on the Arctic Ocean radically changes the relationship between that portion of our planet and the radiation from the sun. Instead of reflecting 85%, as the ice does, the dark ocean surface absorbs 85%. That phenomena is principally responsible for the far more rapid increase in temperatures in the Arctic compared to the rest of the world. And the scientists warn us that this is already beginning to lead to the thawing of the frozen permafrost around the Arctic Ocean, which contains vast amounts of frozen carbon and frozen methane in the tundra and in the shallow sea areas. Were it to be released, over time it would cause a vast increase in the quantity of global warming pollution in the atmosphere. Chris Field from the Carnegie Institution for Science says that the IPCC has underemphasized the carbon stocks in the soil, permafrost, and plants. The permafrost alone, this study shows, contains 1.7 trillion tons of carbon, more than twice the estimate of only 2 years ago.